Hello everybody and welcome to another Mafia tutorial with Iateyourpie. What we do in these tutorials, we take a game that was played on stream and we talk about a specific topic regarding that game, and I try to kind of analyze what's going on, my thoughts if I was in the shoes of the X person, and just kind of again give some helpful tips to for new players, old players, veteran players on how to play certain situations. Our first video we talked about 8 tips to play Blue Villager and not make mistakes so you don't get mislynched. And today we're talking about something that I think is very important because a lot of times I see people misplay it. We're talking about how to play as either Town or Mafia in a situation where the game is on the line, also known as LYLO, lynch or you lose. LYLO is a kind of a confusing term somewhat, but basically what lynch or you lose means is you have to lynch on this day. If you no lynch, you lose, and if you miss lynch, you lynch Town, you lose. There's a little bit of a distinction there. Miss lynch or you lose is a situation where you could technically no lynch, nobody gets voted up, and still have tomorrow to go. But today specifically we're going to be talking about lynch you lose, okay? And I want to break it down from the Mafia side, and I want to break it down from the Town side. And in this specific game, I think both sides made good plays here. Things that I really like. And I want to discuss those things, but I also think there was things that they messed up on that they could have done slightly better and had been in a much better spot. Okay? So we're going to break this down. Just to give you a little bit of a background of what happened in this game, we'll start you off. Basically, Town was in a bad spot. They got to lynch or you lose on day 6. Cop was outed. Marksman shot them. They did get a red read from the cop, which was very good. But Marksman shot them. Otto, who is Clown in this situation, which means in Clown, the last person to vote Clown dies. So Town is in a very bad spot. But luckily, at the end of this day, the confirmed Pi 7 is the bulletproof. Bulletproof, basically, they can take 2 shots, if you will, before they die. So bulletproof hammers on the Clown, which protects them from the Clown's power. But they lose their 1 protection vest, and now they're just basically like normal Town. They will die if they get targeted by the Mafia. So we know that Pi 7 is bulletproof in this situation. They move on to the next day here. Pidal was the outed marksman from the cop that shot. So this is a guaranteed day. So again, we go forward. This is where the game starts to get in line. Now, this is something that I really want to discuss, and this situation on day 7 sets up for day 8 and day 9, and I think it's really just a really good rule to follow in general. And I don't really have it a rule on the list, but just something to keep track of, all right? Something that generally speaking happens, unless Mafia is purposely playing dumb to like get suspicion off of them, is that if someone is going to do something where it looks like they're not paying attention with information, chances are that is Town. In this situation, right here, use cheats. The day is out. And he immediately starts trying to defend the marksman here, right? He immediately jumps out and says, "Hey man, do not listen to Mafia saying who MM is." He's really defensive about it because earlier than the day previous, I think the outed Clown told Marksman to shoot, right? So he did not see at the beginning of the day, it kind of got drowned out in chat, that the cop had outed Pidal as red. And so he says, "Do not listen to Mafia saying who MM is. What the heck?" And a bunch of people come and say, "Cop literally checked it. He was red on report. She was red on report." And he goes, "I'm dumb." And immediately people are starting to set up on use cheats right now because he was not paying attention. Something to very much consider and think about when you're in these situations. Mafia is meeting together every single night. Every single night, and they're discussing things, right? So unless Mafia is trying to be huge cosmic brain here, use cheats is just like not paying attention and didn't see it. So right off the bat, when I saw this, I was out of the game by this point. I had died early. I saw this, I said, dude, he's going to get pegged pretty quickly by Mafia as the scapegoat to get the Miss Lynch tomorrow. And what do you know? Starting tomorrow, when we're in LYLO, and this is where the game really starts to take over, look what happens. Look what happens right here. Immediately somebody votes use cheats the next day. Right off the bat. Right off the bat. And he was discussed as the vote the following day. By a few people as well. But right off the bat. So this is why we need to start talking about this situation. So again, and this is where I'm going to start introducing rules. We'll start with Town side, and then we'll talk about Mafia, how you want to play this. And rule number 1 on how to play as Town, right there. I'm going to make that bigger, actually. Let's see if I can do this real quick. That's really small on my end, everybody. Hold on. Okay, perfect. Rule number 1. Can I make this bold? Let's see here. I can. Bold. Okay. Rule number 1 is look for jumpers. So, in this situation, this is very important to think about, is Freezer is up. Okay? Freezer is up. Now, just ignore, the votes here. This is a played game. Freezer is a role I'll just kind of go over, and this is why it's one of the strongest Mafia roles if you use it correctly. Once per game, can choose to freeze all lynch targets, locking them in place. In LYLO, one bad vote in this situation as Town, if Town makes one mistake, it's over. It's completely done. So you're going to be on the lookout for jumpers. If someone jumps right here and tries to push their agenda, immediately you should have suspicion on them. If they're not confirmed, immediately, right off the bat, this looks bad. And Pi7 calls it right away. He says, no, get off right now. And if you're Town and you're thinking to yourself, hey man, I know that this is one bad vote is over and that didn't get frozen, I'm immediately, like, if I'm looking to scapegoats, if I'm not scapegoat, if I'm looking to, like, throw down, if we don't have a hard person to go on, I immediately go in the jumpers. And not only does no underscore do this once, he does it again later on in the day. He does it twice. And again is told by multiple people that he needs to stop. Okay? So when you're looking and you're playing in this situation and you know for a fact that Freezer is up, Town needs to decide on this as a group. And that comes down to rule number... Honestly, let's make look for jumpers rule number 2. Let's make rule number 1. Town needs to come to the decision together. Okay? This is actually incredibly important. If you have a confirmed person that's maybe it was on a blue, on a copper port, or a power roll that has been outed, that person needs to be the one to call the shot if there is going to be somebody who's going to vote first. And Town needs to agree together on a decision. If Town is not in complete agreement and one person makes a mistake, the game is over. So this is super, super important. Use the entire day to discuss the decision that you're going to be making. And you need to make sure that you are in this together. And you'll notice Pi7, who is confirmed as bulletproof at this point, literally does that. Right off the bat, he says, we have to vote together or Mafia will split. And straight up goes there pretty hard on it, okay? So very good. You know, your PR, in this situation, if you're a power roll, you've got to take the lead. You are confirmed even if you're wrong, your information is still going to be the best information regarding who you think the suspects are, because you at least know that Town knows that you're doing your best. Doesn't mean that you don't listen to other people. It doesn't mean that it's your way or the highway. It just means that at the end of the day, you got to take a leadership role. You got to hear everything from everybody, and then you got to make the call. Mafia is going to be trying to persuade you. They're going to be trying to convince you to go their way, and you need to be looking for this. All right? So again, Town needs to come together on a decision, and jumpers. Look for jumpers. All right. So rule number 3. Use the information. Actually, you know what? We're going to just call this check the logs. And we'll add onto that, use the information here. Let me just update. Check the logs. This is so important. This is so important. And you need to be, as the PR, as the person that is the decision maker, you need to first stabilize Town, right? You need to make sure that they all come together on this decision. But as soon as you've stabilized Town, they know that we can't rush the vote. You need to absolutely start digging on days where Mafia were voted, and digging on days where there was a lot of discussion, a lot of debate back and forth. Day 1 is a fantastic day. If you've got a really interesting day 1, you can go off and go back. But check the logs, and check the logs on people that are getting pushed. Like I said, in this situation, Used Cheats was getting pushed basically for what he said the day before. So check logs on Used Cheats in the beginning of the day. See what's going on here. Does Used Cheats have some bad things that he's saying previously? But it's so important. You need to check the logs, and you need to spend a lot of time in the logs, and you need to be quoting things, and you need to be telling people you're in the logs, and you need to get other people putting things in the logs. Like, people need to be participating. It can't be a one-man show. So again, check some information. Again, if you make a mistake here, the game is over. So take the entire day to make this call, and then go from there. And again, to add on to this with check the logs, you want to go to confirmed Mafia that have been lynched and see how they are playing and what they are saying. A lot of times, now again, Mafia can bust their own team, and they can throw people like under the bus to help them down the road. It is definitely a play that is very successful as Mafia. But early game, I feel like Mafia tends to be a little bit more blendy. And they're not going to hard bus a lot of their early guys. So look at how some of these ex-Mafia are getting pushed. The ones that have been lynched before. How are they getting pushed by other players in the game? How are people reacting to these players getting voted? There's so much information, and you... Honestly, at this point, you know, maybe you come back to the day that you're on right now, if you can make it to the next day and see how people are playing it. But your information needs to be in the previous days, and you need to be diving in the logs and kind of just, again, seeing how people are reacting today, right? So number 4. We've got, I have on here, let me see here. Oh, this is a good one. Rule number 4. Something that you have to understand is Town. In a situation where Mafia is stacked against you, right? Right now, it's 5 versus 4. One mistake, there's 4 Mafia here, and they have a lot of power. They're all... Mafia knows who they are, right? Town doesn't. So they're going to be most likely voting in a block, or most of them are going to be voting in a block to get a mislynch. So that is something that you want to keep in mind. Mafia wants to go all in here. Recognize that and use that to your advantage. You'll notice on this day right here, a lot of people are going for used cheats. All right? You'll notice, again, No is hard in on used cheats. Who are some other players on here? I forget exactly. Let me see. Over here. Okay, yeah. There were multiple people that were going on use cheats here today, which is very suspicious, right? Mafia, a lot of times they will gamble and they will basically sometimes blow it and play all their cards and just go for the one mislynch. So if you see a group of people, for whatever reason, bringing up one person, that's when you start to get a little bit nervous and you need to question that. Because again, the Mafia has a huge voting block here, and Town doesn't know the information. So if you see the all-in, recognize that, take a step back and start checking those people out. Because there's a very decent chance that a good chunk of them are Mafia. Now, granted, Town doesn't know either. So they might be getting sucked into the thought of, oh yeah, use cheats is scum. Must be Mafia. So don't just all automatically assume if somebody is posting, oh, use cheats is scum, his reaction yesterday, whatever happened, is bad. You need to be looking at what they're saying, right? But again, just be mindful. Keep an eye on that. There's a good chance. There was a game that I played where I was actually MYLO. And we were in, I think, either MYLO or LYLO. And I had come up to a conclusion that I was MYLO based on some math that I had figured out. And I had solved the game, where I had mathed it out to where I knew who was all Mafia because of cop reports and knowing that I was MYLO. And the moment I started bringing this up and started pushing on known Mafia because of the decision I found, all of them just came at me really hard. They basically gambled that they could make me look worse than I could make them look worse. What happened was, one got picked off, and then it was just a domino effect. They all just fell apart, and we ended up winning the game. So be looking for that. Look for the mistakes, look for the slips where people try to go all in on somebody who, again, you don't know is blue. Looks a little bit interesting. And finally, rule number 5 here for Town. Let me find it really quick. Is don't say red things. I know this seems like a really straightforward rule, but you really need to play as blue as possible in this day. Because what is going to happen if you make a mistake, Mafia is going to choose you next as the next person they're going to try to push here. Again, use cheats kind of had unfortunate on, they were in LYLO in this situation, and he kind of didn't pay attention and got owned for it. Again, from my perspective, I saw use cheats as blue here, based on the fact that, again, this just looked like an honest-to-goodness mistake, and somebody who is by themselves and not with the team is more likely to do this. But Mafia capitalized and tried to push use cheats very hard. Again, and then, so when you're talking, make sure you have substance to what you're saying, and don't just piggyback on the town leader. I think something that, can happen, and this kind of comes back to the rules that we talked about and how to play Blue Villager in the early days. It's the same in the late game, right? Come to your own conclusions. Don't just agree with what the leader is saying. Come up with why you think somebody is red and somebody is blue. If you start to agree with a leader too much, I think it can be very scary here, and you can get lynched for it because you look like you're trying to suck up to the leader and get to help yourself down the road. What happens is here, Surprise gets voted by the entire team, or the entire town, including himself, which the game was over. But Surprise was really sucking up to the PR here. So Surprise is actually Town, but he plays it a little bit too aggressively. He's way too much, again, instead of like coming up with this, he does put some of his own suspicions out, which is good, but he continues to relay back to the PR a little bit too much. Like, it's just in a weird way. Like, it looks like Surprise is trying to take the leadership role from the Confirms, and that is going to spook Confirms really hard. They're going to second guess you. They're going to say, is this guy really actually trying to help me, or is he just trying to pocket me so I can make a mistake? So just don't say red things. Try to play independent in that situation, because sometimes it can come to bite you in the butt. I know there's a specific game where I played as Town, and somebody, and ended up I never voted them, but somebody was very much insisting on their reads and yelling at me every time I didn't, listen to the reads and I went my own way. And it just felt like they were distracting, and I couldn't, like, it was a lot going on, and I couldn't kind of take hold as the leadership, as the PR or the confirmed. So it's really important. Again, it's good. Work with the PR, work with the confirmed, but don't go overboard. Hold on a second. All right. So now that we've covered how this works out, I just want to kind of go over how this game went on Town side. All right. So the two that were getting pushed were Use Cheats and Pie Gamer. And Use Cheats was kind of like the push the entire day from a couple people who were Mafia. And it ended up, Pie7 kind of, I think, started to see this as BP. And he opted to go with Gamer first here. Use Cheats and Gamer were the two that were discussed by multiple people, but Cheats was the one that was getting aggressively pushed by people a little bit more. So he opts to go Gamer here, and it works out. Gamer is Mafia, the game continues, okay? So again, Pie7 did a really good job. I really like what he did. He got them to work together on a decision. He has kind of looked for jumpers to a certain degree. He called the jumper out to stop, and then it didn't really go back to it, which was a mistake. He was checking logs on people. If you'll notice here, a lot of oh, actually, Town was not checking logs. The only one that was checking logs was Use Cheats, who was blue. So this is something I think Town actually could have done better here. They could have gone back in the logs on some of these days, especially as the leader, and made a call. Go back in your logs, check up. So again, good things he got the Town together, but he didn't really check logs as much as he should have. Again, he didn't really see the all-in, but he did a good job of, again, a lot of Town honestly played this pretty well. Use Cheats, I think, had a much better day on day 8 than he did at day 7. He messed up on day 7, and then he defended himself really well, and he was able to escape getting mislynched here. Okay? So now that we've kind of discussed the Town side of this, and we'll have kind of a general recap, I want to start talking about how to play this as Mafia. Now, Mafia, in this scenario with this game, was at a much better position. They could afford to make mistakes because they were up by so many players. So when you're Mafia, you can play a little bit more loose, but you can't get overconfident. You can't overplay your hand. All right. And this is where I want to talk about rule number 1. Actually, this is really rule number 1 right here. We'll go about this. Rule number 1 as Mafia. How to play LYLO as Mafia. Number 1. Each night meeting is very important. You know, I think night meetings as Mafia, generally speaking, kind of get overlooked at how important they are on the Mafia team, right? I think, at least for me, a lot of times when I'm playing Mafia, and I'm getting better about this, is that, like, we decide on our vote, everybody kind of fend for yourselves, do what you can, let's see you guys tomorrow night. And that's not a good way to play, especially in these late game situations. That night meeting, you need to be like using the entirety of the time. You need to be discussing your plans. You need to be thinking about how can we get this mislynch tomorrow. If we don't get this mislynch tomorrow, how are we going to play after that, etc., etc. This needs to be well talked out. You need to envision scenarios. You need to use, again, I think for our games we use 4-minute max timer. At this point in the game, it's around 3 to 4 minutes because the timer it grows as the game goes on. So you need to be discussing the night before what you're going to do. Don't waste this time. And be ready for anything, right? Don't just like assume that you have this in the bag and think that it's auto. Because again, if one of you makes a mistake, it's very possible that it could spiral out of control and you can lose. And so this is kind of a piggyback on rule number 1, but Freezer needs to be ready. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that one bad vote from Town is GG if Freezer is smart. So Freezer literally needs to know that their job is to like kind of talk, But if there's anybody that's more supposed to be kind of like the passive Mafia member, it is the Freezer. Because the moment Town makes a bad vote on a like, let's say, for example, in this situation, Surprise was Town, right? They ended up voting him. Before they voted him basically when the limited timer went up, which means that once you vote here, your vote is locked in. But had they voted Surprise a little bit earlier, the Freezer literally should be on the button with freeze yes. Because if they get that one mistake from Town, the game is done. So Freezer needs to know his job. He needs to know who his Mafia team are. This is actually a funny thing to say, but sometimes people forget who their teammates are in Mafia. So you need to see, oh my gosh, someone that is a Town just voted another Town. I'm going to hit the freeze button and the game is going to be done. So Freezer needs to be ready in this situation. So designate that, have that planned out. And if at all possible, if you need to bust somebody on your team, don't bust the Freezer. They are the most important role from this point going forward, and you do not want to let them die if it's possible. If it's not possible and your Freezer's toast, sometimes you just got to let it be, but try to keep your Freezer alive as much as possible. So rule number 3, depending on the number of players, you need to designate at least one person as someone who is trying to fight against the Miss Lynch. This kind of goes... let me see here. Let me just format this a little bit better. Sorry, we're using... this kind of goes in contrast to Mafia wants to go all in here. If you go all in here and you literally put your entire team pushing a bad Lynch, and then that spirals out of control and Town doesn't listen to you, not only does that make that person look very blue and it gives Town a soft confirm, it also makes everybody that went against him very, very, very sus. So you need to have one person that's basically going to be the guy that sweet talks the Town leader without being obvious, right? Not necessarily sweet talks him, but just throw suspicion at one of your boys. Because worst case scenario, let's say they don't listen to Mafia and, you know, the Mafia gets lynched, you at least have one person that can make it to late game and potentially set yourself up for a win. Basically, you need to have a backup plan if the all-in doesn't work. So make sure in that night meeting, you have one person that will look good even if the person that you are trying to get mislynched does not get lynched. Very, very important. Talk about these things at night and make those decisions. All right, rule number 4 here. All right, keep tabs on confirms. The worst thing you can do, and I've seen this happen a ton, is at night when you kill somebody, you kill an unconfirmed, which improves Town's numbers. And it also helps confirms lead. You want to kill the confirms as much as possible because confirms are dangerous. Town will literally just listen to the confirm, even if their logic doesn't make sense, even if they're saying something that's so silly that the rabbit hole they're going down to pin one of your boys is really bad. Town will not care and they will listen to them and then they will kill your Mafia. So it's very important that, most importantly, you take out the confirms down the line. The order which you do is going to be depending on the flow of the game. But if you're in LYLO and there's 2 confirms up, it's very important to see how those confirms are playing, what they're reading into. If one confirm seems to be more willing to mislynch on a Town, keep them up. If there's a confirm that's hard leading and is actually putting together really good logic and is pushing on your boys, kill them. Don't try to overthink it. Don't try to think, well, we can weave bomb this here and keep this guy alive. A strong Town is literally going to tunnel on you and you're gonna lose. So just take out the confirms that are a threat to you until there are no confirms left, and that's when you strike. Because when there are no confirms left and you have freezers still, It is so hard for Town to come together on a decision and get a mislynch or and get a lynch on Mafia. So again, keeping tabs on confirms super, super important. All right, rule number 5. Be involved, but don't overplay your hand. This is so, so important, man. Mafia gets cocky. It's so easy to get cocky. And in this situation, this goes along with look for jumpers. And we're going to actually we're going to bring this up. I'll show you something that happened on day 9 that should have been the nail in the coffin for Mafia, but Town just didn't see it. So remember when we talked about yesterday, or in the Town side of things, how No was jumping on use cheats votes here? He did it multiple times, right? He was overplaying his hand. He was cocky, he thought he had it, and he was trying to look like he was blue in this situation because he was like bussing a very obvious red a long way down the road. So guess what happens the next day? So they kill Bulletproof. Governor is still up. And this is what you need to see here. This is a huge mistake by No, and nobody on Town sees it, and he gets away with it. All right? So first off, immediately, it was a long night, a lot of discussion. No posts this, and he says, I'm taking this lead now. We go cheats, and then yeehaw. I'm 100% sure at this point. 100% cheats is red. I don't even care if we lose. We lose. I need all the trust you can give me on this. First off, this is the biggest slip. He had no idea he shouldn't have had no idea which Town lead was going to die here. There was Governor, and there was also Bulletproof. But he immediately posts this huge paragraph that he is the leader that Town needs when we still have a confirmed in Think. And look at this. Think calls him out. Don't vote early on Freezer. Literally after they had this conversation yesterday. It's like 5 strikes and you're out right now with No, and he gets away with it. You're not even confirmed. Surprise points this out. Think is confirmed Governor. And immediately, he continues to try to take control and he overplays his hand. He's so lucky that a lot of people don't see this. And then he says, fine. When you're Mafia, you gotta be smart with how you gotta play, and you gotta play it as if every mistake you make could lead to a loss in the game. And No does not do that. Fortunately, it works out, and they go with surprise here. But if Town would have picked up on this and had seen this play, this could have really, really backfired for Mafia. So again, keep in mind with that as Mafia. Play this smart, do not overplay your hand, and take your time. Don't get overly excited. If you think you're going to win, be smart about it and just be patient. Patience is very important because one mistake can end you. All right, and that was rule number 5. So yeah, we've got 5 rules here for Town, and we've got 5 rules here for Mafia. And there's a lot more to be, it's not just, there's a lot of things that can be talked about in these situations. Eventually what happens in this game, Surprise, again, kind of was trying to take control from the PR, and he gets paranoid about it. He gets very, very, very paranoid about it. Right here he says, I'm intrigued by the fact that you're trying to take lead given that I'm the last confirmed. And Surprise continues to yell at No for trying to, they're all trying, there's this power struggle between Think, who is the actual confirmed and needs to make this decision. Surprise, who's telling everyone else to shut up and listen to Think. And it's just being really overbearing about it. And No, who's Mafia, and telling people who to go on. By the way, look at this. No immediately changes his mind here, and he says, we go comfy. All right? So, right off the bat, if let's say No got hammered here and lost, not only does that make use cheats look bad, or look good now, as Mafia was obviously pushing on those, now comfy is starting to look better because No is all about it now too. He keeps changing his mind. The moment he gets talked off of cheats, he has another target that he's desperately trying to get this mislynch. and he's softing confirms basically while he's doing this because he's going all in. He has no other play but to push everybody. So don't overplay your hand. Be smart about it. Be smooth. Again, as the game goes on, the paranoia gets to think, and he does consider no. No is one of the people that he looks to in this game. And he does a very good job on this day as the leader. He says the decision needs to come together. I believe Think was checking the logs a little bit more. Let me see if they did. Yeah, no logs were checked on previous days. He just gets distracted by Mafia. Mafia is trying to cause a distraction. In fact, you know what? I'm going to actually add this as rule number 6. It's okay to be a distraction. And I'm going to put in parentheses, keep people from looking at logs. This is actually, I think, a viable strat as Mafia. Where you're a distraction that kind of makes sense, but you're just keeping people from going back and actually looking at where the information is. If you can get a town leader to have to settle really silly arguments about things that shouldn't be settled, that's a win for you. The less information that the town is looking at in previous days, the less information they're going to have to make a good call. The line you have to walk is, if you get too much of a distraction, you could potentially get called out for it. And this is kind of something that I kind of like about No. He's a distraction here, and I think he plays really poorly in certain areas, but he also keeps people from checking the logs because he keeps going on about use cheats. Now, he should have got owned here by Town, but it worked. Again, it's all about walking that fine line. Again, LYLO is a very tough situation. It's very stressful on both sides. If you make a mistake, don't feel bad about it. It's one of those things that it's a phrase we have in our community. It's called GG, go next. You say, hey, I did my best. This is my read. And if you're wrong, and you go to the next game. So again, if you're this is a situation I see a lot of new players getting in that they're unfamiliar with. I hope this video helps you and analyze these situations late game. Again, if you like the content, make sure to follow my stream if you haven't at twitch.tv/Iateyourpie. That's where I'm streaming these games of Mafia. My socials are down here. And make sure to check out mafia.gg, a fantastic website. This is where we play. It's for free. You can make an account. And again, the creators of the site love to hear ideas. They love to hear suggestions. And they do a fantastic job. So again, thanks for watching my video, everybody. I will try to continue to put more of these out. And go Mafia.